Hi there, and thank you for requesting this protocol. I made it just for people like you who would like to learn more about the injury and what steps to take in order to understand, treat, and prevent. These 3 steps will help you live pain-free in the long term. The main focus of the protocol will be sciatica. However, it will cover a variety of injuries such as drop foot, numbness in the lower extremity, and everything else in the region. So if you have any of these issues, then make sure you stick around. Welcome to the anatomical section of this protocol. We're talking about sciatica. So first of all, I want to pay attention to the skeletal system because that's very, very important. Now, most of the time people don't make a difference between sciatica and other injuries that could mimic the symptoms of sciatica. There's a big difference between having actual sciatica, which I'm going to explain what that is, versus having the symptoms of sciatica. Okay, so let's have a look at the lumbar spine here. Now, in order to understand how sciatica works, you need to first of all have a look at the nerve roots that come out of the spinal cord. Now, you can't see really nerve roots here, so I'm going to lay out my 3D anatomy software as well for you, so you can have a look at them. But what happens is that in between each 2 vertebrae, a nerve root comes out. And this nerve root will then branch out into like a tree, basically. It's literally like a tree. It will branch out into creating other kind of nerve bodies. And a lot of these kind of little nerves, they would branch out from the nerve roots, first of all, then they would kind of come out like this, and then they would come together and make up like a big nerve, which is the sciatic nerve, for example, and many other nerves that are made up in exactly the same way. True sciatica is a disc bulge or a herniation putting pressure on the nerve root that essentially makes up the sciatic nerve. Every single nerve in the body obviously has a nerve root, and this nerve root can be impinged. The actual spinal cord can be impinged itself. You can see these 2 graphics on the screen in front of you that essentially compare between the actual spinal cord being compressed by a herniation versus like a nerve root of the sciatic nerve, for example, being compressed by a herniation. So it's really important for you to kind of visualize this. And on the right hand side, you've got the sciatic nerve compression, which is what sciatica is. Literally, it's compression because of a bulge or a herniation of the discs in between the vertebra. This will send signals down the leg, so it will start with pain in the lower back, sharp shooting pain. It will go through the glutes. It can spread through the gluteus medius as well. It can go down the hamstrings, and it can go all the way down to your toes, because if you look at this kind of graphic here, the sciatic nerve is the longest nerve in the body, and it innervates everything all the way down to the toes. So a lot of these symptoms that people get with sciatica, especially when they move into a funny position, like for example, if I've got a bulge or herniation on my right hand side, and if I compress the right hand side, that will send signals straight away. Okay, that's how you can essentially sometimes test this. But obviously this is not an official test, so don't kind of use this as a main guideline. All right, there are other tests that we are going to do in this video that will help you further. So hopefully now you understand what sciatica is. Now, if we compare sciatica to piriformis syndrome is essentially the piriformis muscle putting pressure on the sciatic nerve. There is no bulge, there is no herniation, there is no nerve damage. There's nothing like that. And that's why piriformis syndrome is so much easier to deal with. However, sometimes the symptoms can be very extreme and people definitely confuse it for sciatica. So the tests that I'm going to give you later on in this video will help you determine whether you've got sciatica or not. When it comes to the anatomical section here, if we're talking about sciatica, obviously, as we've said, everything from the lumbar spine here all the way down the glutes, the hamstrings, the calf, into the plantar fascia is going to be affected. Some of the muscles on the inside as well, even though there is a different nerve that innervates these muscles, will also be affected, but it's mainly like the center of the hamstrings here, center of the calf. And what's interesting about the sciatic nerve is that it splits into 2 just above the calf muscle. So if you imagine like a line going down here, and then right about here, the muscle will go left and it will go straight down. And these are like 2 different nerves which are a part of the sciatic nerve. So these are called the tibial and the peroneal nerves, and they kind of continue the sciatic nerve all the way down to the foot. So you can definitely feel symptoms on the front of the leg, here, down here, not up here because this will be the femoral nerve, but down here on the front of the entire leg, you can feel the symptoms of the sciatic nerve impingement, which is happening up here, for example, So when it comes to neurological issues, regardless if it's true sciatica or piriformis syndrome or just like hamstring tension putting pressure on the sciatic nerve, these symptoms can definitely overlap because they are following exactly the same pathway of the nerve. Okay, so now that you understand the anatomy behind sciatica, let's have a look at some of the exercises that I prepared for you. We've got the straight leg raise test. Okay, this is a very simple test that you can perform anywhere. And as a matter of fact, all the exercises that I prepared for you today can be done from anywhere. Now, all you need to do here is sit up straight and lift each leg up 3 times. And if you don't feel any pain in your lumbar spine when you're doing this, like in the center of the spine, then you're potentially kind of not really dealing with sciatica. Okay, but that's only the first test. You know, we've got more to do here. But you can definitely feel a stretch in the hamstrings, a little bit of pain in the buttocks, like in the glutes on the side here. But as long as you're not feeling that sharp shooting pain in the center of the spine, then potentially we're not pressing onto a spinal nerve root. The second test is going to include the head position, because now when the head goes down, we're putting a stretch on the sciatic nerve. And when you're raising the leg up, that's stretching it even further from the other way. And again, you're looking for exactly the same symptoms. You know, pain, sharp shooting pain at the center of your spine is what we're looking for here. And if you don't have that, then you're one step closer to eliminating sciatica. But first, before we do that, we need to do the final SLR setup, which is slouching as well, coming from the spine here. The head goes down and the leg comes up. Now, this is a full stretch that you are applying on the sciatic nerve. And just moving the legs up like this is going to pull on the nerve. And if you actually have a herniation or a disc bulge or any kind of compression on the nerve roots, then you are going to feel it in this position. And if in this situation you're not feeling anything, then you've won the lottery and you don't have sciatica. You potentially have symptoms of sciatica. But again, this is pretty relative, and it's very difficult to eliminate the actual condition from just these tests. You could have some level of sciatica, like a stage, maybe like a grade of like a disc bulge, which isn't fully formed into a herniation yet. So keep that in mind. The best way to essentially detect that you have a bulge or a herniation in some cases, in most cases, is an MRI. The good thing about these tests is that you can use them as an exercise. But I've prepared 2 different exercises here for you. So the first one is essentially the glide technique. Now, a lot of the time people like kind of do these exercises and they jump straight for the second one, which we're going to see in a second. But the second one is a lot more aggressive. So the gliding technique is a lot more gentle on the nerve. As you can see there, we're moving point A and point B together. Point A is my foot and point B is my head and my spine. As you can see, they're kind of moving in the same direction up. Okay, we're not stretching the nerve, we're essentially mobilizing it, because nerves are not like muscles. You don't really want to kind of stretch them in the same way. You want to mobilize them most of the time. Now, the second technique is the flossing technique, which is the most aggressive way of mobilizing a nerve, and that's essentially putting a bit of a stretch on it, but not really holding the stretch, because again, keep in mind, this isn't a muscle, this is a nerve. You don't want to stretch it for like a long period of time. Now, here you're slouching down at the same time as raising the leg, and if you actually have sciatica, then in most situations, like, you're definitely going to feel it, just like you did with the test. Okay, this is as you can see, these 2 techniques are derived from the tests, but there are definitely like little kind of things that you need to keep in mind, and definitely start off with the gliding before you move on to the flossing. Now, in terms of like sets and reps and that kind of stuff, I've kind of outlined all these in the description of the video below, so you can definitely like check that out. Moving on to the muscles that we are going to target when it comes to sciatica. Now, the first one is going to be the core complex. So it's not just one muscle, it's obviously the entire core, the bear technique. This is a great core exercise because it really works not just your core muscles, but as you can see, your legs, your hips, your arms, the entire spine. And for somebody who's like dealing with sciatica, this is a very good way of like loading the entire spine without really using any weight. So all you need to do here is get into this position. As you can see, I've formed like a 90-degree angle between my hips, knees, ankles, and like shoulders. And basically what I'm doing, I'm taking a deep breath in through my nose, and then I'm breathing out through the mouth. And when I breathe out, I pull my belly in. So you're essentially squeezing the belly in like a vacuum. You're really squeezing that in when you're exhaling, and then you breathe in again. You relax the belly, you let it kind of inflate. You let the air go into the rib cage, and then you exhale and you squeeze the belly again. So this is a really good exercise. Make sure you practice this before you actually put it into the actual routine, which I've outlined underneath in the description. Second exercise is going to target your glutes and hamstrings, which are very important for making sure that sciatica doesn't come back again after you've rehabbed it, and obviously it's good for rehab. So all you need is like a higher surface, like a box that I'm using there, and I'm just showing you the setup there for my legs, and all you're doing is this kind of scissor-like movement with the left leg, which is the working leg. Now, obviously, the right leg is also working, so it's kind of creating a bit of hip flexion, which is unloaded, so you're not really going to get much out of that. But the left leg is really working hard there when it comes to the glutes and the hamstrings. Okay, so make sure you don't feel any pain here when you're doing this exercise. You should feel everything in the glutes and hamstrings, basically. And then we're going to move on to the third muscle group, and that is going to be the adductors. A lot of people neglect them. I've already kind of spoken about this. Now, we need to target the adductors, but at the same time, targeting the core. You know, we are kind of mixing things up a little bit here. This is a very kind of basic setup, but it's a really complex exercise. So just placing the knee on like a box or a bench or whatever, or a chair, and then bending the other leg and just kind of keeping this position. That's all you're doing, basically. This is an isometric exercise, and you can apply the same breathing as you did when you were doing the bear technique here. So because if you really want to target the core as well. But trust me, like your groin and your adductor muscles are going to be on fire after 30 seconds if you've never done this variation before. So it's a really good one to make sure that your lumbar spine is stable. Number 4 is the half Superman exercise, which a lot of people have probably seen, but I don't think people know how to do this essentially, like in the right and the best way, like the most optimal way. Now with the Superman, I'm keeping my feet on the ground. I'm raising up like this from the ground, but what's important here is for you to hold this position. So it's not just about doing repetitions like on and off reps all the time. It's about including the isometric and the eccentric phases of each exercise. Now you saw me kind of come up pretty quickly into the exercise. After that, I'm going to hold this position for 20 seconds. And once I've finished with the 20-second hold, I'm going to lower my body as slowly as possible. I'm not really counting seconds on the way down. I just want to make it as slow as possible. Okay. And the moment I touch the ground, I come back up in a very kind of normal speed. You know, I don't really care about how quickly I go up. Or how much kind of, you know, I'm not really focusing that much on that concentric movement. It's the isometric hold, which I'm doing now, and the eccentric kind of the very slow lowering that is a lot more important in this position. And the final exercise is something that most people forget about, and that is your hip flexors. So in this exercise, we're going to train them with a kettlebell. So first of all, take your shoes off because you won't be able to fit through the kettlebell handle. And all you're doing there, just hold on to the sides of the box there just so you can eliminate your upper body, and just try to bring your knee as far up towards your chest as you possibly can. And that's it. It's as simple as it gets when it comes to like training the hip flexors. And this is a great exercise for loading them and just making sure that they are essentially active. So this finishes our exercise sequence, which I've essentially outlined how you should be doing that on a weekly basis in the description of this video. So just make sure you check that out before you're kind of finished watching the video. The whole protocol is designed for you to understand, you know, like the essence of sciatica and how to kind of deal with this injury. But obviously, if you have like a more serious condition, or if you feel like you know you've got some good benefit from this video and you want to take things further, you can definitely check out either my sciatica 8-week rehab plan, or you can have a look at my coaching program, which I've used to help like quite a lot of people over the years. Athletes, you know, non-athletes, like all kinds of people really. If you really want to kind of work with somebody who understands these injuries, you can definitely give me a shout, drop me a message, and don't forget to follow my channels, and I'll see you in the next video.